Yeah, so it seems like the main thing here is just to really overcome fear, right? And then you mentioned that there's two main
That's
things.
that's it, right? That's so easy,
Yeah,
easily said. Hey, man, just
overcome
overcome
fear. Yeah,
fear. Life gets good.
yeah. And then here's the thing. So in the book, you also mentioned that there are two main things that guys are scared of, which is, or like they're scared to ask for help, and
Yeah.
they're scared to take on a risk or a challenge, right? So like mentally, how do you really overcome that fear? Because obviously it's much easier to say it than to actually do it, right? So like
Right.
mentally, how can they really overcome that barrier?
What you're talking about is vulnerability, and the vulnerability it has underneath that is that toxic shame. What if somebody finds out I'm not good? What if somebody finds out this is my first podcast? What if somebody finds out X, Y, or Z? And so we don't want to be vulnerable. So we don't risk. We don't expose ourselves in an emotional sense. And I've been that way a lot of times. People will speak of having mentors. I really didn't have any mentors growing up. I had a few people that influenced me, college professor to graduate level, but I didn't like keep that going. And one reason I think I didn't have mentors is I didn't want to like reveal myself, really be known. I remember, I lived on a golf course years ago, and so I should learn to play golf. And it took me forever to get around to getting a golf teacher or taking golf lessons because I didn't want to be embarrassed that I wasn't good at it. Taking salsa lessons. I signed up for first salsa class I ever went to. There were two guys, me and a black guy, and about five or six women. It's on a lunch break. The black guy, he'd been moving his entire life. Don't want to make any racial stereotypes, but he could move,
Yeah,
right? You know, and I'm this, white bread dude, and I was so nervous. I had paper towels in both hands because my hands were sweating
no
so
way.
profusely while I was trying to dance. So I
Yeah.
signed up for a 5-week salsa course. Didn't go to one lesson. So I thought I'm not going to let that win. I signed up for the 5-week salsa course again. Didn't go to one lesson. A
Wow.
third time. Didn't I thought I'm not. So finally, the fourth time I went to a lesson or two. And so I did it again until finally I got halfway decent at salsa dancing. And then I found out, well, I didn't love it. I'm glad I learned. It taught me a lot about leadership, and it taught me about facing my fears. But that's my thing is I don't want to be exposed that I'm not already good at something. And so I'm not a big risk taker because of that. So I've had to work on that. So last year I thought, I've always wanted to meditate consistently, but I've never been good at that. So I talked to one of my coaches and I said, hey, you live where Michael Singer lives. He's a big, meditation guru. Will you coach me on meditation? And we did. I meditated 100 straight days, but I went and got a coach. And then I joined a fitness challenge in my men's membership program earlier this year. So an 8-week challenge, and we had to measure ourselves, take pictures, and a little embarrassing because not in the best shape, not terrible, but I've been better. And that felt good. And I kind of started looking better. So I told in one of my workshops, I need a nutrition coach. Two guys said, I know one, I know one. I hired a nutrition coach that has a specialty in gerontology, working with older people. And so I'm almost about 3 months into working with her, and I'm the leanest I've been in 25 years, and it feels good. But you know what? All of these things required me being willing to get vulnerable and often hiring a coach or going to a class or finding an expert or working with a therapist, something that says I'm not good at this yet. I don't know how to do it yet. I know I could be better. And then being willing to expose your vulnerabilities where you're not already good or competent or masterful or confident at something. And that's scary for most men. Not for all, but
Yeah.
especially for most nice guys. We're afraid of taking that risk of being seen, of being found out, of not being good enough. Because remember those two things we talked about in the very beginning? I've got to be whatever, I think you want me to be for you to like me and love me. So I
Yeah.
better be good enough, and I better hide any way that I'm not good enough from you or you won't. So that's why it is so challenging to live for nice guys to live this really robust, abundant life is because we spend so much time protecting ourselves from being seen and being vulnerable. So that's the risk we have to take.
Yeah, so it pretty much comes down to just be okay with making mistakes and get support. That I guess that's like the main two pillars when it comes down to
I, I,
overcoming, right?
I
If
love the way you, yeah, it's just these two things, right? Yeah, that's it.
no, 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 like
Just
it's good though. Yeah,
go walk on hot coals. That's
go.
all
Yeah.
it takes, right? So it's that easy. So, but I love that about you.
I appreciate
Yeah,
it.
we got to be willing to risk, make mistakes, look foolish, fuck up, go down in
Yeah,
flames if we're going to have a meaningful life. And we don't have to teach ourselves, reinvent the wheel, figure it out on our own. Other people have already been there, done that. Let's ask them how. I mean, as you're podcasting, you probably went and watched some podcasts and watched how people did it. You probably went on YouTube and look for the right setups. You probably, say, oh, I want to be like them. You maybe talk to some people that do podcasts. You probably did your due diligence and research, but you're willing to take a risk. You're willing to reach out to me. You're willing to risk me coming on your show. You went, rented a studio to do it in. So you were
yeah,
willing to take those risks. You were way out of your comfort zone,
yeah,
and that's when the good life walks in. You probably have seen an image before. There's just a little diagram that says there's like this X out here that says the good stuff, and then over here is your comfort zone.
yeah,
That X is outside the comfort zone. So yeah, when we get out of our comfort zone, that's where we find the good stuff. And I just love that idea. Listen, okay, if it scares me, do it. That's
do
been
it.
my
Yeah,
mantra at least since I turned 40, and I'm 68 now. So for at least 28 years, if it scares me, I do it. My wife, bless her soul, she's a strong motherfucker. She has a mantra, si yo quiero, yo puedo. If I want to, I can. And so she's like a role model for me. So yeah, I surround myself with people that are facing their fears, encouraging me to face my fears, that are supporting me, holding me accountable, picking me up if I stumble and fall. So yeah, don't do this alone. Don't do it alone. Find a crew, get a posse, get a team to help you, dive into these things that you want to dive into.